Welcome back. Today we're diving deep into the core mechanics of using generative AI uh, really effectively for high-stakes exams. We're looking at this 12-module system, AI prompting for SAT success.
hmm
And the whole promise here is pretty big, turning those scattered, often, let's be honest, inefficient study habits into a systematic, AI-powered plan for mastery.
That's really the heart of it, isn't it? It's not just about, plugging in a question and getting an answer. The course description nails it. Learning to use generative AI as a dynamic partner, a partner for critical thinking, for strategic preparation. It pushes the student beyond just passively receiving information.
Exactly. Active precision learning. And today, our focus is laser sharp. We're zeroing in on Module 3. If you're prepping for the SAT, this module, it's absolutely critical. This is the engine for 50% of your entire score at the math section.
Think about that score range, 400 to 1600 total. Math accounts for half of that. 800 potential points. You just can't afford to gloss over this section or rely on just generic practice. If you're aiming high, success here is completely non-negotiable.
And Module 3's objective is stated really clearly: mastering the math section with an AI coach. The goal is comprehensive mastery, using AI to conquer, well, every SAT math concept. We're talking algebra, systems of equations, right through to advanced geometry, trig, data analysis. The works.
And it's interesting where this module fits. Module 2, the previous one, that was all about planning, diagnostics, finding the weaknesses, building the roadmap. Module 3, this is where, the work really begins. You move from that abstract plan into direct hands-on skill building, relentless skill building, actually.
So, okay, we're taking that list of weaknesses from the diagnostic and turning it into a concrete system, building skills. We're talking precision, speed, and really getting that deep conceptual understanding, the kind that holds up under pressure. You're not just studying vaguely anymore. You're performing like a surgical strike on the areas costing you points. Okay, let's unpack the biggest problem with traditional SAT math prep. It's the sheer time wasted.
Right.
A student might spend, say, 3 hours on a trig chapter in a prep book. Even if they only struggle with one tiny aspect, maybe tangent functions, they're wasting, what, 80% of that time on stuff they already know?
Oh, absolutely. And that inefficiency, it's not just a time drain, it's mentally exhausting, it's a psychological hit. Look, high-performance study is all about maximizing score improvement per minute spent. It has to be. If your diagnostic says you're great with linear equations, but totally lost on nonlinear functions, or maybe systems of inequalities, every single second you spend reviewing linear equations is a missed opportunity to fix what's actually broken.
And Module 3 just throws that whole generalized approach out the window. The core idea here is using AI to generate practice problems focused only on those specific weak spots identified earlier. So the student spends their entire study session right in their personal growth zone. Maximum impact.
Yeah, we're moving from browsing the general review section to being in the operating room. Precision matters. Think about the Scope SAT Math covers linear inequalities, systems, functions, polynomials, geometry applications. It's broad. A traditional book gives them all equal weight. But the AI, using the prompts from this module, it focuses relentlessly on the 2 or 3 areas where that specific student is losing points right now.
Okay, let's get practical. Let's look at the mechanics of the prompt itself, because the specificity here is, well, it's like a superpower. The source material gives this really clear example. It's a great model for efficiency. It says, generate 5 SAT-style hard difficulty math word problems focused on quadratic equations. Provide a detailed step-by-step answer key.
Right. And that prompt, it has 3 crucial demands, 3 non-negotiables. If you leave out any one of them, you seriously compromise the whole study session.
So let's break them down. First, specificity quadratic equations. Why is being that precise so essential when you're talking to an AI and LLM?
Because these models are, by nature, excellent generalists. Ask for algebra problems and you'll get a bit of everything. Linear, exponential, quadratic, stuff the student might not need right now. Demanding quadratic equations removes that ambiguity. It ensured 100% of the problems are relevant to the immediate goal. The second you lose that specificity, you start wasting time again. Simple as that.
Makes sense. Okay, element 2. Difficulty tuning, hard difficulty. This feels crucial, especially with the digital SAT being adaptive. Once you hit that second math module on the real test, the difficulty jumps, right? You need to practice at that higher level.
Absolutely critical. Practicing easy or medium problems is, frankly, pointless if you're aiming for a top score, say 700, 800 range. Students need to grapple with problems that demand multiple conceptual steps, problems that have those tricky distractors built in. If you forget to specify hard difficulty, the AI usually defaults to average. And you just won't build the cognitive muscle needed for those tough, high-value questions. You have to simulate the real test conditions, not just, casual homework
Right,
conditions.
practice like you play. And the third element gets back to what you mentioned earlier, transparency. Provide a detailed, step-by-step answer key. This is where the AI stops being just a question generator and becomes more like a tutor.
Exactly, because you're not just getting the answer choice A, B, C, or D, you're getting the entire logical path the AI took. This is so vital for complex problems. Maybe your calculation was fine, but your method was inefficient or even fundamentally flawed somewhere. That step-by-step breakdown, it's an immediate feedback loop. You see exactly where things went right or wrong.
So if I'm the student, the benefit is doubled. First, infinite customized practice, on demand, high quality. But second, and maybe this is even bigger, I stop wasting those hours. My whole study session is guaranteed to be laser-focused on exactly where I need to improve.
And don't underestimate the psychological win there, too.
Mhm.
Imagine the relief. Instead of dreading opening a textbook, feeling overwhelmed because you have to wade through stuff you already know just to get to the one section you actually need. You type in your prompt, hit go, and bam, 5 perfect score-boosting problems appear. It just removes so much frustration from the process.
Okay, so we know how to get the right problems generated. That's huge.
Right.
Now, let's pivot. How do we make sure the student really absorbs the method, the thinking behind the answers? This takes us into something more advanced, the logic engine, using what's called chain of thought prompting, or COT.
COTI is really the bridge. It takes you from just memorizing facts or steps to genuinely understanding the concept. It basically transforms the AI. It's no longer just a fancy calculator giving you an output. It becomes a sophisticated reasoning partner.
For anyone listening who's maybe new to this term, chain of thought, could you explain what that actually looks like? In
Yeah.
practice, how does a student use it?
Yeah, essentially, you're telling the AI, slow down, show your work.
Yeah.
You make the model spell out its entire internal logical pathway, step by step, just like a human expert would think through it. So instead of just getting the final answer, you get the whole sequence. Here's premise 1, then step A, then step B. Okay, now we apply theorem X leading to the conclusion.
And the key prompt example for Module 3 really highlights this. It's simple but powerful. Solve this geometry problem and explain your reasoning step by step. That demand for explanation, that's the SUAT trigger. But let me push back slightly here. Does forcing the AI to break down its reasoning slow things down? Does it increase the computational load? And maybe more importantly, could it increase the risk of the AI hallucinating or going off track if the problem is really obscure or complex?
That's a fair question, definitely concerns efficiency. And yes, technically it takes a fraction longer than just asking for the answer, but the trade-off, it's absolutely worth it. Especially for SAT level math. See, SAT math is standardized. It's generally well covered in the AI's training data, so the risk of serious hallucination on standard problem types is pretty low. That tiny bit of extra processing time is, frankly, negligible compared to the hours a student might waste trying to figure out how a complex answer was reached just by looking at the final result.
Okay, so the benefit dramatically outweighs that minor technical cost, especially when you think about the 2 big reasons SAT is so important for SAT success. The first one you mentioned was transparency.
Right. Transparency is the difference between knowing the final coordinates on a graph, let's say, and understanding the 3 formulas and 2 algebraic steps you needed to get there. Take a complex, multi-step word problem. Maybe finding the volume of some weird shape that needs Pythagoras, then surface area calcs, then solving a system of equations. The AI, using COPT, will walk you through each of those steps methodically. The student sees the whole logical flow. They don't just see the final number, they see the how.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So the student isn't left scratching their head, wondering where they went wrong in the process. It demystifies the whole structure.
Precisely. And the second reason, and I think this is the skill that really sticks with the student long term, is structured thinking. By repeatedly seeing and following the AI's systematic breakdown, that step-by-step process, the student actually starts to internalize that way of thinking. They're actively trained to approach problems sequentially, logically. It builds a mental blueprint for tackling complexity.
That's the critical takeaway, isn't it? Under the pressure of the actual test, you see a dense word problem. The natural human reaction for many is panic, or jumping to a quick, often wrong conclusion. The COT method trains them to pause. Okay, what do I know? What do I need to find? What are the logical steps to connect A to B?
It actually saves mental energy. paradoxically. It seems like more work up front, following steps, but it reduces the anxiety and the cognitive load of staring at a complex problem and not knowing where to even start. Once that systematic approach is internalized, let's, first isolate variables, then check constraints, then apply the theorem, they have a reliable framework. They're never starting from absolute zero. They're deploying a proven process, one they've seen modeled perfectly infinitely by their AI coach.
And that has to be the foundation of confidence, right? Knowing you have a system, a structured approach for basically any problem type they throw at you, that's what fights test anxiety. You feel less overwhelmed.
All right.
All right, now let's tackle maybe the most common and honestly damaging failure point in a lot of traditional SAT prep. It's that rut students get stuck in. They take a practice test, mark something wrong, glance at the answer key, oh, it was B, and just move on.
And doing that virtually guarantees they'll make the same mistake again. It's almost inevitable. If the error came from a deep misunderstanding, like maybe they always forget to flip the inequality sign when dividing by a negative, or they habitually mess up exponent roles, just seeing the correct answer x = 7 does absolutely nothing to fix that underlying flawed thinking habit.
So Module 3 introduces a real system for actually eradicating errors, not just noting them. It uses the AI to perform a deep analysis of why the mistake happened. It targets the thought process itself. We're moving beyond just spotting the error to correcting the root cause.
Yes, and we really need to stress the surgical nature of this. The student has to become a diagnostician of their own mistakes. They don't just ask the AI, what's the right answer? No, they have to describe their incorrect thought process. Often this means detailing the steps they took, or sometimes even uploading a photo of their written work showing the mistake.
That first step alone, requiring the student to actually articulate how they messed up, that's already a powerful learning moment, isn't it? It's metacognition. It forces them to confront the mechanism of their own error before they even get the correction.
Exactly right. And the prompt itself is designed to encourage this kind of precise self-critique. Listen to how powerful this phrasing is. I solved this algebra problem and got the wrong answer. Here was my approach. Describe steps. Where did my logic go wrong?
Okay, let's imagine a scenario. Say a student is solving a quadratic inequality. They describe their steps, find the critical points, but then they stop. They forget to test the regions on the number line to find the actual solution set. Common mistake.
Right. So in that case, the AI coach doesn't just say, you forgot to test the regions. That's too basic. It provides specific targeted feedback. Something like, your error occurred right after finding the critical points. This points to a conceptual gap in understanding quadratic inequalities. Quote, because the expression is an inequality, not an equation, you must analyze the sign of the function in the intervals created by those critical points. You completed step 2, but failed to execute the necessary regional analysis in step 3 to define the final solution.
See, that's the crucial difference. Traditional prep might just say, question 14, algebra, incorrect.
Yeah.
Vague. The AI is telling you you consistently fail to perform sign analysis for inequalities, regardless of the specific numbers. It pinpoints the repeatable conceptual glitch.
And that immediate targeted feedback fundamentally changes the learning curve. The student doesn't just learn how to solve that one problem. They learn to identify and correct the specific habit or misconception that caused the error in the first place. They are actively digging out the root cause, and that's the only reliable way to prevent that same mistake from showing up again on the real exam. That's what true mastery looks like.
Okay, so these techniques we've discussed, the precision drills, the COET breakdowns, the deep error analysis, they sound incredibly powerful. But they need to work across the board, right? We need to show this isn't just for one type of math problem. This needs to be like the universal operating system for all 4 content domains of the digital SAT math section, which is, 44 questions in a tight 70 minutes?
That's exactly right. The test breaks down into algebra, advanced math, problem solving and data analysis, and geometry and trigonometry. Module 3 provides the tools, the customized toolkit for every single one of those domains.
Let's start with algebra. It's the biggest domain, often where students feel most comfortable, but maybe where small recurring errors cost them easy points.
Yeah, the versatility here is key. Take something complex like systems of 2 linear equations. A student might get the concept generally, but struggle specifically with, say, the substitution method when fractions are involved. They can prompt the AI for 10 practice problems that must be solved using substitution and must include at least one fractional coefficient. That level of granular control means they hammer that specific skill until it's automatic. Then, maybe next session, They shift the prompt to focus only on elimination methods.
And that same versatility applies just as well to geometry and trig, right? These are often the areas students feel shakier about, maybe because they require more visualization or applying formulas they memorize to situations they haven't seen before.
Exactly. The SAT loves application, not just definition memorization. So the AI becomes a scenario generator here. Instead of just asking for practice on the Pythagorean theorem, the student prompts. Generate a word problem involving a circular park and a radio tower that requires using the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of a support cable. You're using the AI to simulate these novel, sometimes slightly weird, real-world type problems.
So the student isn't just drilling a squared plus b squared equals c squared. They're practicing seeing the right triangle hidden inside a diagram of a building or a weird shape in a landscape plan.
Precisely. Or for trig, maybe they need practice on angle of elevation problems involving inverse trig functions. They can demand scenarios specifically testing that. It ensures they're comfortable applying those specific skills under pressure in unfamiliar contexts. It's about repeated exposure to unique applications of the core rules.
Okay, now let's get into what feels like the most analytical part of the test: problem solving and data analysis. Usually about 5 to 7 questions here. This isn't just about calculation, is it? It's more about interpretation, reading graphs, spotting trends, making inferences.
Exactly. And this domain is the perfect place to use another advanced technique from Module 3, role-based prompting. When you're dealing with data interpretation, you don't just want a math tutor. You need the AI to think like an expert in statistics. So you actually tell the AI to take on the persona, the function of a data analyst.
Right. And the prompt you use isn't just asking for, say, the equation for the line of best fit. It demands a much deeper, multi-part analysis.
Yes, the example prompt from the sources is brilliant. It forces the student to attack the data from 3 different angles. The student provides the visual a scatter plot, maybe a table, and the prompt says, act as a data analyst. Here is a scatter plot from an SAT practice question. First, explain the trend shown in the data. Second, identify any potential outliers. Finally, analyze the provided answer choices and explain why the correct answer is the best fit for the data.
Okay, let's unpack those 3 demands. First, explain the trend. That's forcing interpretation. Is it linear, exponential, positive, negative correlation? What's the story the data tells?
Correct. That hits the core understanding. Second, identify any potential outliers. That requires critical analysis. Which points don't fit the pattern? Why might they be there? Is a question testing whether you ignore them or account for them.
And the third part, analyze the answer choices and explain the best fit. That feels like the highest level of critical thinking here. The student can't just calculate something. They have to build a logical argument, justifying their chosen answer based on their analysis of the trend and any outliers.
The payoff from this is huge. It dramatically deepens analytical skills. The student practices interpreting graphs and tables not just as numbers, but as pieces of evidence that require a reasoned argument. It strengthens their ability to apply logic under pressure, essentially teaching them to see data like a real analyst would. #tag outro.
So wrapping up our deep dive into Module 3, it's really clear this is the powerhouse of the whole AI prep course, isn't it? It takes all that diagnostic data, the planning from earlier modules, and turns it into systematic, measurable, hands-on skill building. And it directly targets 50% of the total SAT score. It's huge.
Absolutely. We've seen the core benefits, those personalized, targeted drills that just cut out wasted time. Then there's the mastery of complex problem solving using chain of thought, understanding the how, and finally that critical system for deep error analysis, getting to the root cause of mistakes, not just patching over them.
The outcome seems to be efficiency, yes, but also real confidence. Every study session feels productive, moving you closer to that score goal, because you're only working on what you need to, and you have this infinitely patient tutor guiding the corrections.
And here's the final thought I want to leave you with, something maybe a bit more provocative. The true long-term value of this AI coach approach. It might actually transcend the SAT score itself. It's not just about getting math answers right, it's about the process. It forces the student into this rigorous routine of structured critical thinking by constantly demanding those code explanations, by making the student articulate their own flawed logic. The AI is compelling them to develop a universal system for breaking down problems.
So you're saying they're not just learning SAT math, they're internalizing a method, a mental blueprint for tackling any complex challenge. Break it down, check assumptions, follow the steps logically, analyze the result. That's a life skill.
That's exactly it. That ability to face complexity, maybe even chaos, with a systematic plan that might be the ultimate return on investment from this module. It ensures the student builds this precise, repeatable system for the math section, yes, but it also creates a solid foundation of analytical competence they'll carry forward long after the SAT is done.